At 6:41 local time on June 8, 2026, a Ukrainian drone operator with the call sign Strelets is watching a locomotive that doesn't know it's already too late. The thermal feed shows it clearly. A Russian diesel locomotive hauling a passenger consist northeast along the single-track corridor that runs between Dzhankoi and Kerch, the line that feeds directly into the Crimean Bridge. The engine block glows white-hot against the cool morning fields of northern Crimea. Behind it, the carriages register as a string of cooler rectangles. The train is doing roughly 60 kilometers per hour through occupied territory that Russia has spent 4 years convincing itself is safe. In 94 seconds, that belief is going to end at the front coupling of a locomotive on the most important rail line in southern Russia's entire war effort. Strelets is 18 kilometers away, in a position he will have to abandon within the hour, watching the feed through a fiber-optic link that no Russian jammer on Earth can touch. His drone, a fixed-wing FPV interceptor modified by the Raid Regiment's own workshop, is already airborne, holding an orbit at 200 meters over the rail corridor near Rozdolna, waiting for the train to enter the engagement box. He has been holding that orbit for 26 minutes. This is the part of the job nobody films. The strike footage that ends up online lasts 11 seconds. The 11 seconds are preceded by hours of sitting in a tree line, watching a screen, waiting for a train that Russian dispatchers have learned to run on no fixed schedule, because Ukraine spent the last year teaching them that a predictable timetable is a death sentence. So the trains move when they move, and the operator waits, and the partisan spotter 40 kilometers up the line sends one encrypted word when the locomotive passes his position and the clock starts. The word came at 6:15. The clock has been running ever since. The math behind this strike is brutal, and it's the reason he's been told to hit the locomotive specifically and nothing else. You don't kill the cargo, you kill the thing that moves the cargo. And on a single-track line with nowhere to pass, a dead locomotive doesn't just stop one train, it stops every train behind it. Then nothing moves. The locomotive enters the engagement box at 6:42. To understand why this one locomotive matters so much, you have to understand what the last 3 weeks have done to Crimea. Ukraine's military has a name for it. The defense minister has been saying it openly: logistics lockdown. For weeks, Ukrainian medium-range drones have been systematically strangling every route onto the peninsula. First, the fuel trucks, gasoline tankers, and diesel haulers picked off one at a time along the highways feeding Crimea, until the insurance companies underwriting those shipments did the math and simply stopped. When the insurers walk away, the fuel stops moving before a single drone is even launched. That is what economic warfare actually looks like. Not the explosion, but the spreadsheet. Then the Chonhar Bridge, the road crossing connecting occupied Crimea to the Russian-held parts of southern Ukraine, struck on June 7th. Then 4 more bridges around Armyansk. Within 4 days, every road corridor linking occupied Crimea to the mainland was closed or under repeated strike. Russian monitoring channels put it more bluntly than any Ukrainian press release would dare. By their own account, there were no intact bridges left at the land entrances to the peninsula. The results were already visible before this morning's train left Moscow. Gasoline rationing across Crimea, 20 liters per vehicle sold by prepaid coupon. And the queues are the detail that tells the real story. Lines of cars stretching not for blocks, but for kilometers. Motorists waiting hours for a fifth of a tank. Hotel bookings on a peninsula whose entire economy depends on Russian tourists collapsing toward nothing, while the occupation authorities stand up a hotline for tourists who drove in and now cannot find the fuel to drive out. Russian analysts have their own phrase for where this is heading. They call it the island scenario, the point at which Crimea, a peninsula that has never once been self-sufficient under any flag, stops functioning as a connected piece of territory and starts functioning as an island that has to be supplied across contested water. A region that Russia annexed in 2014 and declared eternally Russian was, by June 2026, being quietly turned into an island, not by a grand offensive, not by a single decisive battle, but by a few $1,000s of drones hitting the right targets in the right order, day after day, until the map stopped working. This locomotive is the next target in that order, And here's the part the Russian Rail Authority hasn't fully grasped yet. After this strike, the only rail link remaining between Crimea and the Russian mainland will run across the Kerch Bridge, a structure Ukraine has already hit in 2022, 2023, and 2025, which currently passes only light passenger vehicles, and which Russia guards like the crown jewels precisely because it knows what happens if it falls. Strelets brings the drone in. At 6:42 and 20 seconds, the FPV begins its terminal run, descending from its orbit toward the locomotive at a closure speed of roughly 130 kilometers per hour. The operator's first problem is the one that makes this rail corridor so difficult, and the reason the Raid Regiment's released footage of these strikes looks like a video game set on the hardest difficulty: the power lines. The entire rail corridor is strung with high-voltage catenary and transmission lines, the overhead electrical infrastructure that, on electrified sections, powers the trains and everywhere else simply clutters the airspace above the tracks with steel cable an FPV cannot see on thermal until it is almost too late. Picture trying to fly a dart down a hallway at 130 kilometers an hour, except the hallway is strung with tripwires you can only see for the last half second, and the dart costs more than a car, and you are doing it through a video link from another county. To hit a locomotive head-on, the drone has to descend into the exact band of airspace that is webbed with wires. Too high, and the warhead strikes the locomotive's roof at a shallow angle and skips off like a stone across a pond. Too low, and the drone clips a cable and becomes an expensive piece of falling scrap 40 meters short of the target. There is a reason the Raid Regiment trains its operators for months on this exact geometry, and a reason they hit locomotives head-on rather than from the side. A side strike on a moving locomotive is a deflection shot against a target the size of a shipping container traveling at 16 meters per second. A head-on strike turns the locomotive's own forward motion into part of the closing speed and collapses the aim point to a single fixed spot: the windscreen, the cab, the engine behind it. It is the hardest approach to fly and the easiest to hit with. The footage looks insane because the insane approach is the one that works. Strelets threads it. The drone drops below the upper transmission line, levels into the gap between the catenary and the track bed, and lines up on the front of the locomotive. Through the fiber optic feed, crystal clear 1080p, zero latency, completely immune to the Russian electronic warfare that would have scrambled a radio-controlled drone the moment it crossed into Crimean airspace, he can see the locomotive's headlight, the windscreen, the number stenciled on the nose. Then the feed jerks. For half a second, the locomotive slides left in the frame. The fiber line has caught tension somewhere behind the drone, snagged on a fence post, a tree, the lip of a cutting, it doesn't matter what. Not enough to break the connection, just enough to tug the aircraft off its attack path. At 18 kilometers of unspooled glass, half a meter of drag at the operator's end becomes half a meter of error at the target. And at this distance, half a meter is the difference between killing the locomotive and slamming into empty steel beside it. Strelets corrects. The drone dips. Too much. The lower catenary flashes across the camera like a black wire waiting to cut the mission in half. He has no room left. Above him, transmission lines. Below him, ballast and rail. Ahead of him, the locomotive windscreen growing larger every frame. He stops correcting and just flies. Because at this range, the human reflex to fix the picture is slower than the drone is fast. And the only thing left to do is hold the line and trust the last input. Then the locomotive crew sees the drone. At 6:42 and 41 seconds, the train's emergency brakes engage. The driver has spotted the FPV in the final 2 seconds of its approach, a small, dark shape coming straight down the track at the windscreen, and done the only thing a locomotive driver can do, which is apply emergency braking and hope. It accomplishes nothing useful. A passenger train at 60 kilometers per hour needs hundreds of meters to stop. The drone needs less than 1 more second. The physics were decided the moment the locomotive entered the engagement box, and physics does not negotiate with the brake handle. But the braking does create the operator's last problem. The locomotive's nose pitches down slightly under hard braking, and the front of the engine, the aim point, drops a fraction. Strelets corrects in the final 200 milliseconds, nudging the drone down to follow the moving target. the kind of micro-adjustment that is only possible because the fiber optic link is feeding him real-time video with no delay. A radio drone with even a quarter second of latency would have flown over the top and buried itself in a field, and the train would have rolled onto Kerch carrying nothing but a very good story. The drone strikes the locomotive head-on. The shaped charge warhead detonates against the front of the engine block. The copper jet punches through the locomotive's forward structure, the driver's cab, the control systems, the leading edge of the diesel power plant. The blast destroys the cab. The assistant engineer, seated on the left side of the cab, is killed instantly. The lead driver, on the right, is wounded. The locomotive, its control systems and forward section wrecked, coasts to a dead stop on the single-track line. Brakes locked, going nowhere. The passengers in the carriages behind are physically unharmed. The drone hit the engine, not the consist. This was the targeting decision, and it held, because the point of this strike was never the people on the train. The point was the train itself, and what the train represents, and what happens to a peninsula when the trains stop. What stops on that track at 6:43 is not just one train, it is every train behind it. Here is the part that doesn't show up in the strike footage. A single-track railway is not a road. There is no shoulder, no detour, no just go around. This corridor is the artery, the line that carries the shells, the fuel, the armor, and the men from the Kerch Bridge into every Russian unit on the peninsula, because bulk military logistics moves by rail or it doesn't move at all. When 120 tons of dead locomotives stops on the rails, the entire artery becomes a parking lot made of steel. Nothing behind it can pass, nothing coming the other way can get through, and the only way to unplug it is to send a recovery train to drag the corpse off the tracks, which can't happen until the section is secured, which, on a line where a drone just appeared out of nowhere, is nobody's idea of a quick job. There is a particular cruelty in the arithmetic here. The Kerch Bridge rail link had already been reduced to a fraction of its capacity by earlier strikes. The ferry crossing is slow and exposed. The roads are cut. Rail was the supplementary route that was supposed to take up the slack, and the insurers had already stopped underwriting fuel shipments on it because they could see exactly where this was going. So when this one locomotive dies on this one stretch of single track, it isn't just blocking a line, it's removing the last efficient method Moscow had for moving heavy armor, artillery shells, and refined fuel onto the peninsula in bulk. The most efficient tool left in the box, gone, for the price of one drone and one operator's mourning. And this is where the strike stops being a drone video and becomes a regional crisis. Within hours, the Russian-installed rail authority does the only thing it can do. It suspends passenger rail service to Crimea entirely. The Southern Suburban Passenger Company announces the suspension of service along multiple routes to and from Simferopol. Trains from Crimea to the mainland will now terminate at Kerch, passengers shuttled the rest of the way by bus. Buses are pulled off their normal routes in Kerch, Simferopol, and Feodosia and redirected to carry stranded rail passengers in timetable order as they accumulate at stations, which creates its own quiet absurdity. The buses run on fuel, and fuel is the one thing Crimea no longer has, and every bus diverted to rescue a stranded trainload of passengers is a bus burning a ration the Occupation Administration cannot guarantee it can replace. They are solving a transport crisis by feeding it into a fuel crisis. The Dzhankoi station, the northern hub of the entire Crimean rail network, had already been closed to passengers days earlier, after a separate strike hit it during a Russian troop rotation. One locomotive, one drone, one operator 18 kilometers away threading a warhead between power lines, and the rail network of an entire occupied peninsula seizes up. At 6:51, Strelitz is already preparing to move. This is the cost of the fiber optic link, the trade-off that the Raid Regiment accepts on every mission. The fiber cannot be jammed, cannot be spoofed, cannot be detected as a radio emission, but it physically unspools behind the drone for the entire flight, a thin reflective strand of glass that lies across the landscape, marking the path back toward the operator. After a strike, that strand is a trail. Russian counter-drone teams know to look for it. The Raid Regiment knows they know. So the rule is simple and absolute. Hit the target, confirm the kill, relocate immediately. The operators have a grim joke about it. The fiber gives you a perfect picture right up until it gives the enemy a perfect map to your chair. He confirms the locomotive is dead, stopped, cab destroyed, going nowhere. He confirms the line is blocked. He marks the position. Then he begins breaking down the position to move, because the most dangerous time for a drone operator is the minutes after a successful strike, when the enemy knows exactly that someone was just here and is working very hard to find out where. The locomotive will sit on that track for a long time. The recovery operation will be slow and nervous because the people sent to clear the wreck will know, the entire time, that the airspace above them belongs to whoever sent the first drone, and there is no particular reason to believe the second one isn't already orbiting. That is the genius of the thing, if you can call it genius without flinching at the cost. You don't even need the second drone. You just need them to believe in it. Fear does the work of an entire squadron for free. The Moscow Simferopol train will not complete its journey. The passengers will finish the trip by bus, if there's fuel for the bus. And somewhere in a logistics office on the Russian mainland, someone is looking at a rail map of Crimea and reaching the conclusion Ukraine has been engineering for 3 weeks. The trucks are uninsurable, the bridges are down, the rail line is plugged, and the only artery left into the peninsula runs across a bridge already hit 3 times that could go down on any given morning. By Kiev's own count, military cargo traffic on Russia's main supply highway is down 71%. 2 million residents and thousands of Russian troops are now living on whatever is already on the peninsula, plus whatever can be squeezed across a single damaged bridge. Russia spent 12 years building Crimea into a fortress, a forward base to project power across the entire Black Sea. It turns out a fortress with one road in is just a very expensive trap. And the man who sprung it this morning was sitting in a tree line 18 kilometers away, watching a screen, with a spool of glass thread and a drone that cost less than the windows it just blew out. Bye for now.